Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast covering all things Ipswich Town since 2015. My name is Mikey Penty-Smith and you're joining me for the final flagship show of 2021. And today I'm joined by Joe Fairs and Craig Fimbo. Joe, is COVID testing negative for Joe Fairs yet?
No, it's still testing positive at the moment, which means I will be here for another few days whilst my family are sunning it up in Madeira and I'm just at home on my own.
I mean, Craig, you're testing negative and staying negative, I gather, towards the ECB at least.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Negative towards England cricket, but positive towards Ipswich Town.
Yeah, it's a nice, unusual position to be in, isn't it?
Well, yeah, one of them is. Yeah,
one of them is, yeah. Lovely stuff. And Craig, you were at the game yesterday and you're still in complete bemusement as to who the man in the yellow shoes is.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you're going to give us this hour to try and work out who it is. Yeah.
We'll crack the case.
Yeah, go in. Yellow shoes, bald guy, yellow shoes, camel skin coat. We need to find out who he is.
We need to get a picture tweeted from the Blue Monday account in the wake of this pod as well.
Yeah, I've asked Phil, though, TWTD, he's not sure. He thinks, like I do, that it's a sports psychologist of some description. So we shall see. He's been around for a little while and he's always sitting behind the dugout as well. So he's on the pitch, but don't know who he is.
The mystery goes on. We'll move swiftly into the news. And unfortunately, we found out today that the Lincoln game on New Year's Day is being postponed. Not exactly a huge surprise, that one, Craig, but frustrating all the same.
God, it is frustrating. Well, it is a surprise considering Kieran McKenna pretty much said it was going to, well, he was pretty confident it was going to be on in his post-match comments yesterday, wasn't he? But I think, reading between the lines leading up to the match, we pretty much thought it was going to get called off. And then you look at where Lincoln find themselves in the form table and having just lost at home to Milton Keynes and seeing games at Rotherham away and Ipswich away in the space of 4 days, it probably isn't a huge shock to anyone that they've managed to call both off. We don't know. You can only take things at face value, and if they say they haven't got enough players, they haven't got enough players. I know Joe said that they don't have a reserve team, so they're going to be slightly more affected by it than other clubs who do have another raft of senior players behind the first team squad. But it's just disappointing, isn't it? That. Well, I suppose it is. I heard McMill say on the way home that he isn't that fast, and he quite likes the fact that McKenna's going to get even more time on the coaching field with the guys, for when the games do start again, which is fair enough. You can see it both ways. But I think just from a fan's perspective, we've had one game in 20 days would have been one game in 20 days over the whole Christmas and New Year period, and it's when people like to go to matches. It's when crowds are at their highest. When people,
especially with pack out PR.
Yeah, people from further afield come back to see the family at Christmas and bits and pieces like that, and taking the chance to go and see games and bits and pieces. It's just a shame that it hasn't had to happen, especially on the back of the result yesterday. But it is what it is. We're not the only guys in this boat, are we? Not being affected by it.
No, and maybe it's a good thing we're out of the FA Cup as well, because it'll make it easier to find a date, won't it? Although I suppose, that FA Cup date has already been taken up by the Gillingham game, hasn't it? So
I think
clutching at straws there a little bit.
Yeah, I did have a quick look. I think for the first 2 weeks of January, we've only got that one game, and then the second 2 weeks of January, they've got 4. But March looks pretty empty. There aren't any midweek games in March currently. There's just one on each of the
we didn't
weekends.
have the earlier notice, because we could have pulled forward the Wimbledon game to Saturday, because I know they're very keen to play, aren't they? They wrote the letter to the AFL about the sort of transparency being shown, and they've lost big crowds. If we had a few more days' notice and we could have been playing Wimbledon on Saturday, I think they'd have been happy with that. A full house at their place, big gate receipts coming through the door and going from there. But as it is, their game against Plymouth is cancelled. We're cancelled. I say it just seems like, without sort of pointing fingers at individual clubs, it does seem that certain clubs are just using this to to just cancel some games that they don't particularly want to play. But it just seems the short-sightedness of it. It's like you do realise that these games do need to be fitted in before the end of the season now. It's not like they're going to disappear. You're now going to have a week later in the season where you might have 4 games in a week, which is what cost Rotherham their place in the Championship last year, that they had like 2 4-game weeks at the end of the season and just ended up struggling. And I say, because we've had the game last night now, I'm a little bit less concerned, but I'd have felt all that pressure under McKenna would have just built up and built up and built up. At least there was something just to sort of pop the sort of balloon a little bit yesterday and just sort of bring it down a little bit. And we've had the game, we've got the win, and we can move on and then look towards the next game from there. Because otherwise, if he'd have been going another 10 days without it, that sort of nervous energy that he mentioned in his post-match press about the players, probably trying too hard to impress a new manager in training sometimes, it'd have been a strange one.
It would. Next on the agenda, you mentioned Kieran McKenna, is that we were actually given an injury and illness update ahead of the Wycombe game. We learned that Raheem Harper, Carl Edwards and Toto Nsiala have had COVID over the festive period, and Bersant Salina has been struggling with a hamstring injury and illness. John Nolan is back in training.
On the grass.
Joe, he's back on the grass, yeah. How refreshing was it to have some light shed on these things? Or was that not something that bothered you about Paul Cook?
No, it was something that bothered me. I'm sure people won't be surprised to find out on that side of it there. But it just seems, and I know I'm sort of jumping about a little bit here, but even when you look at the sort of post-match press conference after the game yesterday, it just feels like the fans are sort of treated with a little bit more respect with regards to, I'm actually going to talk about the game and actually believe that people can understand these things and not just like this, I don't know, that sort of real dated attitude of sort of transparency and anything you give away is given an advantage to the opponents, and I'm sure certain things are like that. But Hayden Coulson being out for 12 weeks, if you just say he's a couple of months off being fit, it's hardly a massive deal, is it? It's not like anyone's game plan is going to change because Hayden Coulson's away. He's been at Middlesbrough for apparently 4 or 5 weeks, so it's not like people in the game don't know he wasn't there, but yet we can't get any update on him. It's just it just seems unnecessary to me.
And the thing is, as well, you can keep things quiet. We didn't know that Christian Walton wasn't playing yesterday until the team comes out, so you can still give 80% of the information without telling everybody everything, can't you? Just to keep people in the loop, really. He
was just sort of showing his flexibility again, wasn't he, McKenna? Because he's shown that he likes to be transparent, but he also, when it will benefit him, will hold something back, and because it would have made a big difference to how. Well, maybe not a huge difference, but it definitely would have given Wycombe extra incentive to get crosses or balls into the box earlier. They'd have been planning for that if they knew that Hladky was going to be between the sticks.
I suppose we don't know when Walton tested positive. They might not have tested positive till after the presser. Yeah,
that is true as well. It's true as well. So staying with McKenna, and he added Fulham's under-23 assistant coach and analyst Charlie Turnbull to his staff earlier this week. Are we expecting a few more of these appointments over the coming days and weeks, Craig?
I think they'll take it steadily, but I'd imagine there'll be very similar style of appointments. Pretty intellectual, educated guys. Not wishing to demean anyone who's been here previously, but I'd imagine there's a few more BA ons after the names of the guys who are there in the club at the moment than there have been previously.
You think that they're Bachelor of Arts, do you?
You know what I mean. Yeah. I suppose sports science is an A, is it really?
It'd be a BSc, but
that's it. Yeah.
Sorry to be pedant.
More than my BTEC in business administration, regardless. But yeah, no, I'd thought it'd be very similar type appointments. Again, guys that they've worked with previously, whether it had been passing them at Loughborough or Fulham or even
coaching badge courses.
Yeah.
And in that article, Craig, I haven't got the name written down, but there was something in there that caught your eye. It was somebody's job title that you like the look of.
Somebody's job title?
Yeah, it was like the ball striking specialist. Or something
yeah,
like that,
yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, at Fulham, he had a part-time job as someone who's ball striking specialist. Yeah, fantastic. Just what you need in the professional football club, I'd have thought.
How the other half live in football.
Absolutely. Well, as we said on the WhatsApp, it's something that Alan Judge could have done with poor old fella as he was scuffing the umpteenth 20-yard shot towards the advertising hoardings along the grass.
Teed you up for that. Possibly your final mention of Alan Judge in 2021, Craig. Maybe. Right, let's get into the Wycombe match action. And high-flying Wycombe came to town without their manager Gareth Ainsworth, who had COVID. I think that news broke similarly late to the Christian Walter one. So former Ipswich youngster Matt Bloomfield was leading things for Wycombe. This was their first match since the 11th of December. Sorry, not since September. So they've, similar to us, a little bit undercooked in a period where they would have been expecting to be playing constantly. We wondered, Joe, whether McKenna would keep a similar team to the one which drew against Sunderland or really switch it up, because we don't really know exactly what his favourite formations are and things like that. And he ended up just going with the former, didn't he? Near enough.
Yeah, I sort of posed a question on Twitter and in the WhatsApp group earlier in the day, just saying, do we think, is he going to make a big change? He's going to try and stamp himself on it. But I thought probably the right thing to do after how he played at Sunderland, especially in that first half, was to stick with it. But there were some tweaks to the positioning of players in that. Previously, it was sort of Sonny Aluko playing behind Macaulay Bonne and James Norwood, but this time was very much Norwood on the left-hand side of a free and Aluko on the right-hand side, especially out of possession. Maybe sort of in possession, it drifted around a bit differently, but Norwood had some definite defensive responsibility to do down that left-hand side. So it was a tweak rather than just going with the same again, effectively. But no, it's good to see.
Were you at all worried, Craig? We've mentioned it already that Hladky was in goal for this one. Were you a little bit worried, especially with the opposition?
Well, yeah, exactly that. Yeah, but we can only go by what we've seen previously, and he has been a bit flappy and a bit nervous. And as you say, of all the teams, you probably don't want him to be making his comeback in League One against it. Probably was going to be Wycombe Wanderers. Yeah. You certainly feel a lot more confident if Walton had been there, because he has in the main been a pretty reassuring presence on crosses and coming for the ball and bits and pieces like that, hasn't he? But transpired, he wasn't too bad.
He wasn't. I'll just quickly run through that team. So it was Hladky, as we mentioned, in goal. Donacien, Edmondson and Wolfend in the back three. Wes Burns was right wing back. Penny left wing back. Morsey and Evans in the middle. And as Joe says, out of possession, Aluko was on the right, Norwood on the left, and Bond through the middle. But to me, a lot of the time, it looked like Aluko was sort of playing as part of the midfield three, with Norwood a lot closer to Bond. But they were very
fluid.
They were games drifting around, wasn't it?
Yeah,
they were very, very, very fluid, weren't they? And as you say, Mikey, they both pretty much came a lot narrower, didn't they? When we had the ball. And obviously Morsey played
clear tactical plan there, though, wasn't it? Like you could see it in action.
Yeah, and that similar to what Paul Cook tried to do with his four at the back and the wingers, is that our wing backs were getting wide. They were providing the width, weren't they?
They were, and the Wycombe team, usual sort of formation for them with the back three. Stockdale looked like he'd been well fed over Christmas in goal for Wycombe. Jacobson at one of the left foot, Farino, Joseph and Stewart, the back three. They had Thompson holding in front, and then it's Abita, the left wing back, McCarthy, the right wing back, Wheeler and the impressive McCleary behind Hanlon, who's up top with Vokes. And the game followed a very different pattern to the one it was only a few weeks back, wasn't it, at Adams Park, where Ipswich actually started like a house on fire. Wycombe seemingly allowing our defenders to step out from the back. Wolfenden and Edmondson, we saw quite a lot stepping out from the back. Burns set out Morsey, shot over from distance. A few minutes later, we had the ball in the net after some good wing play from Aluko, set out Bonne, but he was just offside. I mean, I saw it live, and there's only one camera angle, isn't there? But I think, judging by the reaction of most people, it wasn't even marginal, was it? He looked like he'd gained a few yards at least, didn't he?
Yeah, I didn't like him, but no one in the crowd really seemed to be complaining either. That's normally what I judge on, being in the completely opposite corner. I look over to the lower Cobbold terrace and say no one seemed to be moaning too much. But as you say about about Wolfenden coming out, he set up that first chance, didn't he, that Morsey had a shot with, because they seemed to be sort of going man for man in midfield. And what Evans was very clever at, he sort of took his man wide and left a gaping hole for Wolfenden to move into, which he can do, and probably he's been reluctant to do over the previous manager and a half. But he was getting back into the swing of things yesterday.
At one point, Wolfenden was standing with the ball and just rolling it about with underneath his feet, and Mick Mills was talking about how he doesn't like that showing off by just standing there rolling the soles of your feet over the ball. That's too fancy Dan for Mick.
I'm pretty sure Mick Mills used to do that sort of thing all the time, and maybe he was just sort of prodding the ball instead.
It knocks you off balance, apparently, rolling it with the soles of your feet.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that personally. I think you're safer rolling it under your foot.
He was knocking the mud off of his long studded Adidas's, using that heavy leather ball as traction. That's what he was doing.
But Mick Mills. I mean, we're all far too young to have seen Mick Mills in his pomp, but he was a defender that would get the ball out of his feet and then he'd scan the pitch, wouldn't he? From the footage that I've seen of him, he's someone that did like to play out from the back. So I'm surprised he didn't approve of that. But I suppose Wolfenden hasn't. When he has stepped out from the back in recent times, ignoring the Wycombe game, he has been a little bit clumsy at times, unfortunately, I'd say, in recent times.
Yeah, they've just been out of practice, though, haven't they? I think that was sort of on show from all the guys who attempted to do it yesterday and did to, varying levels of successes. They're just out of practice of having to do it during matches, haven't they? They haven't been permitted, allowed, told to.
Yeah, that was the one thing for me that sort of said at half time, which is very noticeable how much more direct the sort of centre backs were, but without being long ball, it was very vertical the way they sort of played the ball, either passing it or running with the ball, and it definitely was something we'd worked on. And McKenna spoke about it after the game, and like you said, where Evans pulled the man aside, there was times where it just opened up, and it's like, well, just go. You've got cover back here, just go. And it seemed like more once they got into a decent position, there was a lack of maybe a little bit of movement around them for them to do anything with it. But all three of them carried the ball sort of 40, 50 yards in different times there.
And what was actually sorry, Mike, before we can get on back to the match, talking about the defence, is that what's noticeable is that at Wycombe free kicks, they had a ridiculously high line, didn't they? They were keeping them well away from our 18-yard box. And Jacobson had a free kick down near me in the corner where me and Dave are, a direct free kick. And all three of our centre-halves formed the wall. We didn't have any of those three were marking their tall players. Edmondson, Donatian and Wolfenden formed the wall, of which actually I think it hit them as it happened. And also we went man for man at corners, which we haven't done for a little while. So they have been working on stuff and changed that. And it may be different for the next team we play against. That won't be Wycombe Wanderers, so we won't be quite as high. We won't need all our tall defenders in the wall. But it's just good to see that these little tweaks are being made, isn't it, already?
Indeed, it is. Yeah, and Macaulay Bond was looking back to his best. He very nearly opened the scoring for us. It was another fizzing cross, I think this time from Burns. And Bond is to me, it's looked like he's done everything right. He's got good contact on it, but Stockdale's made a really good save. He is a decent shot stopper. We finally did get our rewards for a superb first half, though, on the stroke of half time. Craig, I'll come to you as you were there. It all came from that Donatian throw-in down the right.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of our attacks in the first half came down that side, didn't they? They came down Burns' side and Morsey, who's playing, as you said, playing a lot further forward and starting the high press further forward, and he got a little bit confused and didn't really know what to do when he got near the box. But in this occasion, he was in the box again, wasn't he? The throw from Donatian was into Bond, wasn't it, who cushioned it and laid it off to Morsey. He sort of just bumbled into the box, and I think their defender actually knocked it onto Morsey, didn't he? And it looped towards Stockdale, who parried it. It wasn't a classic goal, but it parried it out onto both of Norwood's knees and into the goal. Norwood hasn't quite got into the realms of chucking himself into the North Stand, has he? We may get there before the end of the season, who knows? But it was fully deserved from that first half. It was a really, as you said, Mikey, it's a really good front foot first half from the very, very beginning. And a couple of free kicks aside, Wycombe didn't really trouble us too much at all. The guys at the back were good. Wolfenden was getting his foot in. That's and winning his headers, which is something that he's probably been criticised for doing. The two midfielders were working well. We seemed to have a lot of space in midfield. Morsey was getting forward. Burns was playing well. Penny, not quite so much on the left. Norwood working his socks off out wide and then getting in the middle. So it was a really great performance. You just hoped, a bit like Sunderland, would you have needed more than the one goal on the back of a decent first half performance?
Yeah, and Joe, how refreshing was it to see us start on the front foot, but then actually be able to maintain it over the course of the first half? We never looked wide open, did we? But we always looked a threat.
Well, it just, I know we're sort of beating the drum about how poorly coached we've looked, and I'm sure we're probably going a little bit early saying it, but it did feel that whenever a player made a run, there was somebody coming and covering it. I was only watching it on the iFollow, so I can't sort of see how it looked in the ground, but it did just feel that we were better organised, and it might be partly just due to having three at the back that effectively you've always got that spare man when you do that anyway, which I think is something we've missed. But I think Morsey has been someone who's really good at what he does, which is going around and hunting the ball. But when you're sitting and he's the deepest line midfielder and does that, it can pull you open a little bit. And it seemed the swap of roles between sort of Evans being the one that sat deeper and actually read the game well and moved around with it, and Morsey just sort of given license to get up and chase the ball around seemed to work a lot better for us. It meant we had more energy up the pitch, but also we didn't look too open at the other end of it. So I don't know, it just was good. And we had some struggles in there. I thought Abita gave Wes Burns quite a tough time going both ways, but Burns kept going and kept pushing there. But I don't think anyone had a particularly easy game out there, but I thought we really, really did play well. Yeah,
and I actually felt like a couple of the players that maybe did struggle in the first half actually came out and improved in the second half. Penny probably being the main example, and Hladky was a little less flappy as well. We'll go into the second half, and obviously we weren't quite as free-flowing as we were in the first half, but Bon and Norwood had half chances early in the second half, and they kind of got in behind, but neither of them looked particularly comfortable on their left side. Hanlon fired over from close range for Wycombe, who were then growing into the game. Chaplin came on for the excellent Aluko. See, Norwood, then it was very obvious that he was playing out on the left once Chaplin came on. For me, was there a formation change? Did you see, either of you?
Well, when Carroll came on, it changed a bit, but we'd been quite fluid between the sort of 3-4-3, 3-5-2. I don't know. It was very much with the ball compared to without the ball. It was more than as opposed to just a straight formation change, because without the ball, Norwood and Aluko were wide, and with the ball, they sort of dropped around there. So it wasn't a sort of difficult to sort of put it with numbers on the paper, effectively.
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, Carroll came on for Norwood, didn't he? Carroll had sort of a couple of dodgy early touches, but yeah, Norwood, as you mentioned, Craig, not really loving the fans at the moment, but he got a standing ovation. He did applaud back, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he had an ongoing battle with, I think it was Stuart, wasn't he? He was having his battle with for the whole match. That was a decent watch, wasn't it?
And it works because I think Stuart's a good League One defender, and he had quite a bad night. Really, we'll come on to Stuart. Actually, he came really close. Well, probably should have nicked a point for Wycombe in the 88th minute. Dangerous corner. There was a header which Hladky sort of got a hand to. That was from Vokes, and then the contested rebound is fired over by Stuart. I don't know whether he realised how much of a good chance it was. He just sort of lashed at it, but watching it back, it actually looked like quite an easy chance to me.
Yeah, I don't know, but when I watched it back, it seemed the ball sort of sits up a little bit, and there's sort of 4 or 5 bodies in between him and the goal. So it was one of those ones, and it might have gone in, but it needed a little bit of luck to go in, even if he'd have struck it well. But it just seemed
he definitely struck it well.
Hladky was sort of, when you sort of see how much pressure Hladky was under, he makes a save, but he's got 3 people around him in front of him. It's almost just like jabbing a hand out to try and keep the ball out. And
he did a lot.
So that's just how Wycombe play. But I thought Hladky did well all game yesterday. There was that one dodgy punch at the start of the half, in the first half, where he was under no pressure at all and just led to us being under a little bit more pressure. But I thought he did really well there, because I'm sure, as you mentioned earlier with Craig, I'm sure once fans saw the team sheet and saw the team we were playing, that was a big area of concern. I'm sure Rich would have been singing his praises.
And the thing is, and especially for him as well, it's good for him to, because he would have been nervous and apprehensive, and certainly coming in against a team like that. And he dealt with the corners relatively well. He had a good punch, didn't it? It was in the second half. I think, don't know if it was a free kick or a corner that Jacobson swung right in under the crossbar, didn't he? And he got two decent hands to that and pushed it away.
And he kicked fairly well as well, didn't he? Because that's an area of Walton's game which isn't great. He moved the ball. He came out quite quickly a couple of times as well.
And ultimately, Hladky has signed a 3-year contract at Ipswich Town, and Christian Walton is on loan. So it's in our interest for Hladky to do well. And I'd say you speak to any Salford fan or any League Two fan, and they'll tell you how brilliant he was as a keeper. And it's just a case of hopefully he can get some confidence here and push on.
Indeed. And before we get to the Twitter questions, there was some late drama. It actually looked like we were going to... we had a couple of almost chances, and then Piggott replaced Bond for the last few minutes. And can you talk us through that Morsey run, Joe? Probably, apart from the goal, the highlight of the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Morsey sort of gets the ball in the middle of the pitch and he gives it to Chaplin. And you think Chaplin just don't do anything silly with it. Just keep the ball and push on with it. And Chaplin plays this... ridiculous, for me, it looked a really poor ball, sort of like a 20-80 ball against Morsey's favour, but Morsey just sort of goes into it like a rhino, but manages to pick the ball up. And I think he sort of beats the first man, and then I think it's Scowen against him who's just picked up a yellow card. He sort of doesn't know whether to commit or not, does he? And I think he ends up worrying about pulling him down and getting sent off and going from there. And Morsey just sort of keeps going to the edge of the area, and he sort of slows down. And you think, well, time to have a shot, really, but he's got Chaplin to his left, and Piggott probably is the ball you should play to the right, who's in masses and masses of room. But ultimately, he gives it to Chaplin. Chaplin can't miss. You see, you think you can't miss there, and he fires it past the keeper, and there's a sort of the great sound from the crowd.
Amazing sound, isn't it?
The sort of celebrating the goal and after it, and that's what I was like. I was off my sofa at home, and then all of a sudden my head was in my hands because you thought you couldn't miss, but ultimately it didn't make any difference because Wes Byrne got the rebound, took it to the corner, stood on the ball, and then from the throw-in he won. The full-time whistle went straight after that, but it would have been nice to cap off that win with another sort of second goal on the break.
What actually happened is that Wes Byrne's took it to the corner, their guy fell to the floor holding his head, and we won the throw, and that was... Wycombe weren't as bad, but they were still. It was nice to see them moaning at time wasting that someone else was performing on their behalf.
Well, there was one good bit of time wasting at the end where Chaplin, the ball was played to Chaplin, but it was offside, and he sees the flag goes up, and then he pretends to take a really heavy touch into the corner, and it goes miles into the corner. But rather than their keeper try and get the ball to hurry up the game, he goes and moans at the ref about time wasting. And it's like, mate, you've got like 40 seconds to try and find an equaliser here. You've time wasted in every game all season ever for the last 3-4 years. Wycombe as a team, they're probably one of the worst for it. And rather than actually get on with the game, you're moaning about time wasting. When strange.
Yeah, they're not. I don't wish it to come across all high and mighty, but it's not the sort of team you want to be paying good money to go and watch every week.
No.
Is it really?
And they've got the better of us over the sort of last couple of seasons with regards to league positions, and I wouldn't begrudge them the success, but no, it's not a team I'd enjoy watching. They turn every game into exactly the same sort of game, just a battle. And I say you can hear Mills on the commentary where he just basically says everything they do is just set up just to deliver a ball into the box. Every touch is just put back there to knock it long, and it is sort of percentage football to its extreme end of it. I don't think you could get more percentage than they play with regards to just everything's just putting your foot through it, and I don't like watching it. I'm glad I've beaten them twice this year. I hope we don't have to play them next year, but by Dane of us going up, and I say fair play to them. They've got a tiny budget and they've massively overperformed with it, and they did well in the Championship last year, especially in the second half of it. But no, not for me.
Not for you. But yeah, 1-0 was how it stayed. We moved within 10 points of Wycombe, who dropped down to 6th. Table's not really looking any brighter, is it? But just great to finally have a little bit of new manager bounce, eh?
Yeah, well, yeah. If we hadn't have won, would have been 13 points away from them, and them having a game in hand. So, you could well have been in the realms of definitely writing the season off, rather than definitely writing the season off.
Indeed. Let's get into the Twitter questions. And FPL Tractor is up first with a James Norwood question. What did you think of Norwood from the left? We have sort of talked about it, haven't we? What FPL Tractor likes about it, he's keen to and will naturally support Bon, which means that he's less isolated. He definitely looked less isolated last night, didn't he? It does feel like a bit of a round peg in a square hole, but could it work?
Well, what he does give you is he works bloody hard, doesn't he? So and as Joe said earlier about his defensive work, he was doing the defensive work out left, and then busting a gut to get into the middle to help Bon, and then working his arse off to get back out to the left to do his defensive work. And obviously, the only thing that let him down on a couple of occasions was his left foot. Trying to just bend it round the fullbacks into the path of Bon. He tried it a couple of times; it didn't come off. Well, it's not going to, because he's not, adept at that position. So yeah, FPL Tractor is exactly right. He probably is a square peg in a round hole, but probably the best we've got at the moment, because in that particular formation, in that particular role, you probably need someone who's going to work as hard as he did yesterday. And it'd be nice to have Fraser out there, for example. Maybe he's got a left foot and maybe a bit more naturally balanced, and may mirror a Luco in that respect, but he's not going to be working as hard as.
I think sometimes when you've got a free like that, though, where you've got sort of a central striker and two on either side, you almost need one that's got this. You need one striker and one midfielder so that they naturally balance themselves out. Because if you end up with like two wingers there who don't have that goal threat, you just end up relying so much on your main striker. So it may be something that works, but I don't know. I don't think long term James Norwood on sort of the left wing is going to be the answer there, but it depends who we're going to look to bring in, or if someone like Kyle Edwards, for example, can add some goals and assists to his game, because he doesn't seem a natural player that's going to get in the box and score you. Like the goal that James Norwood scored last night, or the goal that he scored against Sunderland, or the goal that he scored against Wigan. These just where the ball drops and you're just there to score and have that instinct to get after the goal. And we haven't got enough of those in the squad. Maybe someone like Connor Chaplin's got a bit of that, but does he have the physicality to get up and down that left flank like James Norwood did? Probably not.
But we don't know if it was just a horses for courses. We don't know, do we? We don't know Kieran McKenna's formations. It may just be a horses for courses in this game. Next match, in 3 or 4 months' time, whenever we play next, it will be a completely different formation against that particular opposition.
Indeed, yeah. That next game is Gillingham away now, isn't it? So as long as we stay clear of COVID in the Ipswich camp, that one will be on, won't it?
But it should be, because everyone should be out of their isolation periods at Gillingham. But
and we can definitely fully trust Paul Scally and Steve Evans.
Absolutely. Friends of the show. Super Franz. Arguably our first coach manager with emphasis on improving our players rather than collecting them since George Burley. He does put question marks, so that isn't a comment. Who do we think will benefit most from this approach?
Well, I think when I was reading some of McKenna's comments yesterday, and he basically said, talking about the players coming out from the back there, I was pleased with the three of them tonight. Obviously, Janoy's playing right centre-back, right back, and his role is a little bit different to George's on the other side. But yes, we want to build up attacks from the back better. We think that's going to help us control games, but also penetrate more. With the three boys that play tonight, with JD, with Wolfie, with George as well, they're all capable on the ball. We want to improve it. We have to make it better, but it's important for us as a team that we build from the back, that when teams come and press us, we can take the ball and play through that pressure and hopefully attack quickly the big spaces. So I think the answer is, for me, is not particularly hidden in that. It's Luke Wolfenden, isn't it? A player.
Yeah.
You can't play Toto Nsiala in that role, can you? Because he just is not capable on the ball of doing what Luke Wolfenden is on the ball. And yeah, Toto Nsiala is probably a better defender, but I thought Luke Wolfenden up against Hanlon last night, it was a tough competitor who gave him a real tough game. I thought physically he was excellent against him. So yeah, for me, they're the players that are going to benefit the most. Janoy Donatian and Luke Wolfenden probably in that, and with that, in the rest of the team, it's hard to know exactly what the attacking roles are because of sort of what Craig said about, is this how we're going to play? Is this going to be horse of courses? I'd like to think Kyle Edwards is the player that could do that. Maybe even Raheem Harper. These players that seem to have sort of high ceilings on their ability levels, are they two that can sort of progress from it. But I think Luke Wolfenden it's up to him now. He's got the opportunity to make a big step up here, and if he can take it, the sort of, not the sky's the limit for him, but it wasn't that long ago he's been linked with sort of Sheffield United, was it, when they're in the Premier League and things like that. And with these teams playing free at the back, if he can carry on defending as he has done the last couple of games and carry on playing the ball as he has done, he's going to be getting a lot of suitors.
I just wonder, I completely agree about Wolf, and he's the one that I wrote down here, and also Harper, in that, Morsey, for as well as he did yesterday, he still didn't look like a natural fit for him, did it? You know what I mean? In terms of
not when he's carrying the ball, yeah,
not when he got to within 40 yards of the opposition goal. He made the break with it, but then what do I do with it now? He had a couple of chances to shoot when he took one of them, but he had probably a couple more chances. The chance at the end where he played in Chaplin may have wanted to play in Pigott. He may be able to be coached to become that better player, or he does the deeper role and allows someone like Harper to come in and do that more marauding role.
Absolutely. Alex Hare asked, what did you think of his post-match interview in terms, so this is Kieran McKenna, in terms of the work they did to get Bonn 1v1 and how that translated on the pitch?
Yeah, so I've listened back to it, and just generally, I just think it's nice to have a manager come out and actually talk to you as though you understand it. I like to think, as a podcast, I think we have a good understanding of football. We sort of talk about the game well generally, and people comment on that to us when they give us feedback on the pod. And fans want that level of detail now. And we're not saying we want to see their exact plans, but we've heard sort of about coming out from the back. We've seen that the formation was slightly asymmetric, really, with regards to Donatian covering more for Burns to push on, and Penny dropping in so that Norwood would go there. And like he was saying about Bond, just playing with his back to goal and sort of getting there, and it seemed to work, wasn't it? Getting him up against that last defender, and that is where the goal came from, wasn't it, at the end of the day? And
it's also the bit we said, I think he said after about 25 minutes, they changed their formation slightly and matched us and pushed us up. So we played over their press. We played slightly longer and put it into the gaps behind. But again, that's something that you probably noticed as you were seeing it. But you've actually got your manager telling you that this is what we did and this is why we did it. It's just completely different to what we're used to. He just seems crikey, again, we're one game into a 5-year success period, but he just seems like a driven individual, calm but driven, confident, not overly emotional,
self-assured,
kind of guy. He just seems to be pretty happy with where he's at. But we shall see. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the nose, isn't it? That's the phrase.
I think some people said after Kieran McKenna's sort of first interviews at the club, I think generally people were impressed, but some people said, I can't really see how he's going to motivate the players. And obviously he didn't have much of a career himself as a player. But do you think modern footballers will take to him more because of he'll explain the tactical side of the game and hopefully get the best out of them in that respect?
Well, we are in League One now, aren't we? So it's not like you're coming into a top championship squad with players that have had a much better career than he has. If you think he was a hot young thing at Tottenham who was in first team squads who retired through injury, so it's not like he's just come as a shoe salesman that's done his coaching badges and come through, and he's worked in the game all that time, worked with good players all that time there. So I don't think with the position the club's in, I don't think there's that huge worry about the players not respecting his abilities there, because ultimately he's probably earning more money as a coach at Man United than any of the players in the squad is, which they're the sort of things that matter, aren't they? So I don't think there's an issue with that, but we'll see in time. If we start struggling, I'm sure that thing will be thrown at him. But one of the things I found interesting was every time a sub came off, he was sort of had his arm around them, chatting them through and showing them things. At half time, you could see him talking to the players after the game with sort of both Norwood and Luke Wolfenden as well, sort of pointing things out and actually having sort of proper conversations with them, it seemed.
But what we, at the end of the day, the proof will be in the pudding, won't it? They'll follow him if the results follow the tactics and the detail they're going to in training. But we're only looking from the outside in. We don't have any visibility of what happened beforehand or what happened afterhand, what's happening now. But you just get the feeling that things are possibly a bit more detail driven and more specific, tailored tactics and training and things like that, and that the players can only benefit and buy into it. as Joe said, the modern footballers nowadays, people like Harper, people like Edwards, and maybe Wolfenden now, they're the sort of thing that they want to. These modern young footballers, they're the sort of details that they need to or used to getting.
Especially those that have come through the big sort of peak Premier League academies, the Cat 1 academies playing under 23s football. They're sort of coached within an inch of their life almost in those places. But there's a lot of analysis and not technical. And I know we sort of look at different sports here, but when you talk about like the NFL, for example, the players in that league, they have meetings sort of like 8-10 hours a day going through things. And football will go there eventually. I'm not saying it's going to be as detailed there, but it's not just turn up and kick it around and play like this. It's as you search for more and more detail, times you'll go too far. But that's where we're going to be. And when you look at the sort of the coaching setup that's been brought in, you look at the fitness setup that's been brought in around that. That's where this club is going, and everyone's going to need to get on board, and we're going to have to hope it works.
Fingers crossed. Slight change of pace here from Mullet. The pub was heaving, the coups lively, the coups in lively, and the Churchman's was like Galatasaray's cauldron by the end. I think I saw a couple of people stand up. Is the biggest takeaway from last night that the potential here is massive, that we are a club that can do better if the Americans can make the right moves?
Yeah, I think it can be. We're getting 26,000 people to come and watch a game against Wycombe Wanderers, aren't we? And we're getting a similar amount to come and watch a game against Lincoln City eventually in the third division. This isn't. We've said we're probably not the biggest club. We look at Sunderland and they're getting these crowds every week, regardless. But you can tap into this potential. The club shop's full. The fan zone was packed yesterday before the game. The infrastructure is there to. It just needs to be portrayed on the pitch, because as quickly as it's arrived, it will quickly go again if things don't improve on the pitch. We are still riding that crest of a goodwill wave, aren't we? From the beginning of the year, first quarter of the year onwards, really unbelievably given results. So as we know, people are willing to give people. The fans are probably more willing to give people time behind the scenes than the owners. But no, Mullet's absolutely right. There is, if you're getting the Churchman's starting chance, then things are looking up.
If you build it, they will come. That's it. Yeah, but no, this is why Game Changer bought Ipswich Town as opposed to a whole slew of League One clubs that were available, because you just can't create a fan base like we've got. We've got this fan base because of our history, because of the success we've had in the sort of 60s and 70s and 80s. It's sort of standing on the shoulders of giants almost. When you look at, for example, a team like Bournemouth, if they had a 30,000 seat stadium, they would never sell it out, and they've spent best part of 10 years in the Premier League. You just cannot build a fan base like we've got. And there's other teams of similar sizes. When you look at Norwich up the road, your sort of Leicester's, Derby's, Nottingham Forest, these teams are teams that have the potential to sell out 30,000 seaters regularly, and we're one of them. And I think the fans of Ipswich have talked down the club for a long time. And when you look at where we are sort of geographically, we're only an hour from London at the end of the day. It's not far. And when you see the Americans come over with sort of fresh eyes looking at it, you look at Mark Ashton, for example. He's been at Bristol City working for Stephen Lansdowne, one of the richest men in the country, and he's walked out on that to come here because Ipswich has got more potential than Bristol City, and Bristol City's a team in a city of 600,000-700,000 people, nothing anywhere near it, but Ipswich is bigger than Bristol City and will be, and we just need to make sure we get it right on the pitch so that we can become a big team again, like we were. And you see, like I say, you see the away followings that turn up 250, 300, 600. We shouldn't be in this league, and if we were performing just to 70% of the potential we've got as a club, we'd be well out of it. But unfortunately, we've been performing to about 10% of the potential we've got as a club for too long. And
what was also noticeable yesterday is, I don't know if it's just the area of the ground that I sit in, but there were a lot of kids there yesterday. So, well done to all the parents and grandparents that are still persuading these kids that this is the way to go rather than the Premier League. It is a tough gig to, I know from bitter experience, it's a tough gig to sell to kids to come along and watch a struggle. So, there's people are doing their, the fans are doing their bit as well in terms of buying into it all.
Yeah, just a really small thing for me. On the way out of the sort of on my way back to the car after the game, at the traffic light, some youngsters wound down the window and asked if we'd won, which is quite nice. Just hearing people that maybe aren't motivated enough to go to the game, but they still refer to the football club as we. Like Joe said, I think Ipswich has been talked down. The club has been talked down a lot over the last few years, and you can understand why. But it's good that they are sort of reconnecting with the community and people feel a part of it. And just to sort of finish, while we're quite high on the potential and things like that, just another positive from me. I managed to get a pint at half time yesterday, and it was pre-poured.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was as quick as that. It took a minute, the transaction, from getting down there and getting it. And
well, they have said that they have been doing walk rounds at half time and things like that to see where things are going wrong, and it shouldn't be difficult to get pints pre-poured at half time. These aren't camera. It's not a camera meeting where people need to check what the cask is like. People just want to go down and get a pint within a couple of minutes of walking down there. And if they spend the whole first half pouring pints, and you've got one that's been poured in minute 1 and it's a bit warm, does anyone actually give a toss? You just want a beer and you just want to chuck it down your neck and get back up there, really, don't you?
And what is nice as well, actually, is even in the fan zone, there's another bar. Obviously, got the big marquee. There's another bar now outside the marquee where they serve beer, and also where they've split the AstroTurf at the back of. They'll call it the West Stand, not
Pioneer.
It's called the West Stand, isn't it? The Magnus West Stand, isn't it?
The Magnus West Stand. That's it. There's actually a bar on that part of AstroTurf that's just outside at the back of the stand there. So they are adding more facilities to enable to buy bits and pieces that we want. You're not just relying on the concourse bars.
Yeah, I've heard you can even get a decent coffee in the fan zone, which decent coffee in a football stadium is unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah,
not that you'd be drinking that, Mark, would you, Jay?
I don't like coffee.
No, you love beer.
An orange squash.
Yeah, he drinks. Yeah, orange squash when he's testing positive. One last question from Chris Rand. I think he's a little bit harsh here, but I can get where he's coming from. Will certain deep-lying players, in brackets, Wolfie, the Fridge and Morsey, all have to stay behind in training until they learn what to do when they find themselves heading towards their opponent's penalty area with the ball? They all kept having a go, and the results at times were a little bit comical. I think, there was a few times where they strided forward and there was a few cries of shoot, but I'm not sure with those.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of movement ahead of them. And Wycombe, and like I say, you've got to remember Wycombe, a very well organised team, that there wasn't the easy balls to play there. So, but yeah, hopefully that's what comes with it in time. You get those sort of patterns of play, you get those movements in place, so that when those players do stride up the pitch and we have broken the lines, that we can actually do something with it, as opposed to just sort of slow down and end up. But I think the goal came from, that was Wolfie breaking for the goal, wasn't it? That ended up giving it to Burns out for the throw in, and then quick throw in from there. So that is where things are going to come from. But it is going to take time to settle. And we've got a nice run of fixtures coming up. When you look at the next, well, on paper it was the next 8 games, but now the next 7 games. I know you've got Sheffield Wednesday there, but you've got Gillingham twice, you've got Lincoln, you've got I think MK is in there as well, Wimbledon. So you've got some teams that you could put a decent run together over the next few games. I think it's probably too late for the playoffs this year, because I think you're going to need to have such a good run over the season. But you look at the next 7, if we could string 4 or 5 wins together in those 7 games and get ourselves in a decent position for the latter part of the season, confidence rising, a few goals scored, then who knows where we could end up.
I think as well, as I said earlier about these guys breaking forward, it hasn't really been overly natural, and they haven't been permitted to do it. So I suppose it's a case of how quickly and well they can be coached into doing it, how natural it is to some of them to do. I say it didn't look particularly natural for Morsey to do it, but can he be coached? And if not, can Harper? He's got one professional goal in his career, Raheem Harper. So he's got goal scoring midfield written all over him. John Nolan, who knows?
Indeed. So the other results, lots of PP draws. Crewe lifted themselves off the bottom with a 2-1 win at Morecambe up the Crewe. Oxford just so consistent, aren't they? 3-0 win over AFC Wimbledon at home. And game of the night was Shrewsbury 0, Accrington 0. So the table now from the top, Yeah, Rotherham, despite losing their last game, at the top with 47 points, averaging just over 2 points a game. Sunderland
Can
in
go top
second.
tonight, can't they?
Yeah, 46 points after 23 games at the time of recording. Then it's Wigan, Plymouth, despite their game being called off. Then it's Oxford on 42 points, same as Wycombe, 42 points. That's 10 points ahead of us. And the traffic between us and those places are, it's Accrington, Portsmouth, who are in decent form. Sheffield Wednesday are also in decent form. And then Milton Keynes.
Well, we've got Accrington and Sheffield Wednesday to play in January, haven't we? So, they are starting to become must wins, I suppose.
It just would be nice. I know I always say this, but it would be nice to go to a few games in the spring and them actually mean something for the first time in a few years. But yeah, thanks for that, guys. And is there any final words from you? Any words of wisdom ahead of New Year?
No.
Anything to plug? Any good Christmas presents? Any good books?
Oh, actually, I'm into Paul Mariner's autobiography. He's just got his transfer to Ipswich Town from Plymouth. He decided to join Ipswich rather than West Ham, so that's where I'm up to in that particular.
I'm a little bit ahead of you. Just spoiler alert: we've just won the FA Cup.
Oh, for Christ's sake!
Well, what a bombshell to finish on. So yeah, just finally from us, thank you to everyone who's watched, listened, liked. Yeah, please like this video and make sure you're subscribed. And also those of you that have made really generous donations. There's been quite a few over the festive period, which are much appreciated. So yeah, all there is left to do is say Happy New Year, up the town, and goodbye.